Well, super excited to have you here, Bruno. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Excited to make this happen. You and I have been chatting a little bit prior, but great to meet you and kind of have this longer form conversation.
Yeah, no, thanks. Excited to be here.
Perfect. Well, I would love to give the listeners a little bit more background context into who you are and how you got into crypto before we deep dive into what you're building.
Yeah, so quick background, born in Brazil, grew up in South Florida when I was a kid, went to MIT, studied computer science, started my career doing fintech AI software for Wall Street banks. We were trying to do NLP before it was feasible, so a little ahead of its time, a conversational interface for, technical topics. Then, since then I've really had two kind of parallel tracks. So I've been an operator for a long time. First company was an AI. We sold that to Palantir. And I got to be a part of that going public, which was really exciting. Ran their AI platform. And then my second company was also an AI. We were building AI testing tools for computer vision teams. And after the Palantir acquisition, I, finally, it was like the first time in many years I got to really choose what I wanted to work on. And so I started, getting more into crypto and just got sucked down the rabbit hole, as they say. But I also had a parallel track as an investor, which has been really relevant in a lot of the work we do. Started doing some scout investing in college. I ran a scout fund, ran another scout fund after college. And then the fintech I worked at had an exit. So I've made about 50 angel investments since then, and currently also run my own venture capital firm where we write, $50K to $200K checks into early stage companies. And it's funny, I started that before I was in crypto. So our fund is primarily like enterprise SaaS and biotech, but now we also do some crypto because it's all I do now.
Amazing. You've been busy.
I stay very busy. Yeah, I'm very restless.
I feel like we could probably do an entire separate podcast just on like your earlier companies and how you built them and scaled them. Maybe before we jump into
I also got very bored during the pandemic and opened a registered investment advisory. So technically I am also a FINRA registered RIA.
Amazing. Well, I guess from being able to successfully sell your company or and be part of the Palantir IPO, what were some of the biggest things that you just learned through going through that experience early in your career?
Yeah, it's interesting. I even go back a little further than that to Kensho. Kensho was the first company I worked for, and I joined them when they were 6 people. And literally they didn't have an office. They were working out of a conference room in General Catalyst. They're a VC firm. And that was the office. They just gave us a conference room and they're like, hey, this is your office. And, I remember when I started there, there were these round tables and it was 3 of us, with our laptops, opened up against each other. The one time I spilled a bottle of water and it got over everyone's laptops, but I got to be a part of that journey from that day. Fast forward 4 years, they got acquired for $600 million. And so I watched that journey and I saw these people that, they didn't do everything right. They crushed some parts that mattered, right? In that case, for that company in that market, it was, go to market, it was, partnerships, it was hiring the best damn team that I've ever worked with to this day. But, the product was a shit show sometimes. The internal, organization was a disaster. There was no product. So they did a lot of things wrong. And yet there still were this tremendous success. And that was probably one of the biggest, inspirations for okay, if they could have pulled that off, that kind of success, they gave me a lot more confidence. Say, hey, maybe I can go do my own company. Maybe I can go start my own fund. And I don't have to worry about getting it all right, having exactly the right experience. But, something I've always thought about is as long as, you go into things, with an open mind and self-awareness about where your skills are, surround yourself with the smartest people possible to, see your blind spots and fill in gaps in your knowledge and just put in your best effort, great things will come out of that. And at Palantir, yeah, I came in and was a product lead at a public company and I definitely was not prepared for that, but just came in, head first, like I do everything else in my life.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's also one of the biggest things that I've learned is a lot of it. I mean, you can make mistakes, but a lot of it's just showing up every
Yeah.
day and just putting your best foot forward, learning and continuing to iterate. Because I think a lot of people look for magic bullets, and they're just as much as I wish that there could be one. You can't like bribe product market fit. You can't kind of buy your way into a lot of things, and so it's just a lot of hard work.
I don't know if you ever heard the saying about lead bullets. You know, you need more lead bullets and a lot of them versus, you know, hoping that one silver bullet pays off.
Exactly. And then I think that was from Ben Horowitz's book. And then the other line that I liked in there, I think he said there was only two kind of emotions from like during your entrepreneurial journey. I think it's euphoria and terror, and lack of sleep enhances them both.
Yeah. And sometimes you have them in the same week. Sometimes you have them in the same day. Sometimes in the same hour. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Definitely. Well, no, I mean, your background's amazing, and just all of what you have accomplished thus far. I mean, you said you kind of fell down the crypto rabbit hole. Could you share a little bit more about like what got you interested in kind of your journey, just getting into crypto?
Yeah, it's interesting because I went to MIT, and 10 years ago, my classmates were getting really into crypto. Dan Elixir, Jeremy, Rubin, Bitcoin core dev, and they were telling they were literally running around saying, everyone buy Bitcoin. And they negotiated a donor to give every single MIT undergrad a quarter of a Bitcoin. And what did people do? They all literally sold it at a discount, like OTC, as soon as they got it. So that was my first exposure to Bitcoin. And I thought it was really interesting. The tech was really interesting, but didn't think that much of it. I was a startup guy. And so for me, I'm like, oh, that's one other innovation. Bitcoin, my friends also invented CRISPR. It's like, you got to pick, where you're going to focus. And I was doing like iOS stuff at the time. So I thought it was interesting. And fast forward 2015, after the Ethereum white paper came out, Jeremy Rubin again was telling everyone, buy this ICO, 40 cents. I didn't listen to him, but I thought, oh, okay, like this is interesting. I'm a programmer. I'm a software engineer. Like, okay, now this is cool. You can actually run code on the blockchain. It's a decentralized state, decentralized computer. So I thought it was really interesting, and bought a bunch of ETH and started doing like a white paper club. But the space got pretty like scammy pretty quickly, and the white paper stopped making sense, and the tech started seemingly like being vaporware and snake oil. And I think I was like, I don't know about this space. Like, it seems that like there's a couple like deep giga nerds in here, but everyone else is just like full of crap. But I owned like 6 figures of ETH in 2016, 2017. And when the market crashed, I sold all of it at like $85 in 2018, in what is probably the worst financial decision I've ever made in my entire life. Because that was when we started my first company. And my co-founders were like, Bruno, you can't be trader. You're not a trader. You're a founder. Like, sell that shit. Like, get stop. I was checking the price every single day. And they're like, yo, are you the CEO or are you like a trader? Pick one. So I was like, you know what? Famous last words. I want to make my money through my company, not through this like crypto stuff. Wrong decision. And so fast forward, and then I spent the next 4 years working in AI. And when I finished my time at Palantir post-acquisition, I got back into the space, and, the 4 years prior, 2017, I was like, I don't know where I would fit into the space. Like, I don't know where I would contribute to crypto. I'm not a trader. I'm not like a deep core dev. I'm not a finance person, but, I've always been like a B2B person. Like, I love helping companies. I love working with companies. I love building software, for, kind of business use cases. And, 2021 after acquisition, I went back. I was just investing and advising, and I'm like, oh, there's like really interesting companies being built. And, I don't really know, what they're all doing. I don't fully understand it, but I understand company building. And I can see that a lot of the knowledge and the playbooks and the tools that exist in our commodities in Web 2 and equity did not exist in crypto. Crypto companies were figuring things out, doing it all manually. No one knew what the heck they were doing. I was like, okay, like this I get. Like, I think there's an opportunity here to do something for all these new crypto companies.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you joined a little bit prior to when I did, but I got in kind of during 2017 and definitely observed the similar things where I was very excited about the promise of like ICOs at that point and being able to kind of allocate capital to different projects from this like new method. But then it quickly turned into, just white papers. And I was smart enough to stick around, but I should have gotten into more deeper into the space during that bear market. But no, it's amazing
and at the time too, like it was, there wasn't the same community that there is today, because that's what actually pulled me in. Right, what actually pulled me in was initially NFTs and the monkey DAO. I bought a Solana monkey. Really? And I was like, oh, I get it now. Like, I see why people are into this stuff. Like, it's a cool group. It's like, Monkey DAO, they're all like pretty smart. They're builders, they're founders, they're investors, they're traders. And that actually pulled me into Solana. I just thought the monkey was cute. I was like, I like the art. It seems like a cool project. And then the Solana community, like Ethereum community, like what is it? It's so like, it is decentralized, where it's like, it's very ethereal. It's so big and you don't know where to start. But Solana community, where do you start? Like literally it was the hacker house. I showed up to the New York hacker house and I'm like, wow, like everyone is here. Investors are here. Founders are here. Raj and Tole are here. Like, holy shit. Like I can actually meet everyone and put a face to a name and feel like I'm actually a part of this, community, instead of like feeling like some sort of outsider trying to break in.
Yeah, the hacker houses that Solana did, I still think today are probably one of the most important things that they've put together. And just as you mentioned, on the community side, making it feel real and alive, which it is, but being able to actually go in a place in person and see everybody, it really is an amazing feeling.
Yeah, Magna would not be where it is today if it wasn't for, the Solana hacker house that we went to in those early days.
Wow. I highly recommend people go to the hacker houses if they've never been. They're definitely worth it. And the nice thing is they spread them across the world. So definitely attend one if you can. But maybe jumping forward a little bit and starting Magna, like, could you maybe just describe what your product is, what kind of is the vision, and then we can kind of take it from there.
Yeah. So our product, the easiest way to think about it, we call it like token management, token operations. Like if you're a crypto company, you have a token and you are, giving that token to investors, to contributors, team members, employees. How do you track who owns how much, who owns what, whether it's by a legal agreement or by a DAO vote or by a handshake? Like, how do you track where those tokens are supposed to go, going to go? And then how do you actually distribute those tokens? Like, how do you actually get them to the people you're trying to get them to, right? And the average case for us is a company comes to us, they're about to do their TGE. They have, 20, 30 investors on 3 different unlock schedules. They might have 10 team members. Some have different unlock schedules than others. And we make it really easy for them to just like upload that information, put those tokens into the smart contract, and then those tokens automatically unlock to their target recipients on whatever that custom unlock schedule is, whether it's monthly, quarterly, whether there's a cliff, or whether it's block by block or second by second. So it's like tracking who owns what, actually distributing the tokens, and it doesn't have to be in the smart contract. We make it easy to do an airdrop, to do a bulk transfer, and actually track how much you're supposed to transfer. Then the last piece is kind of like understandability. So how do we make it really easy for those recipients, that investor, that employee, that contractor, to be able to log in and see, how much am I getting? When am I going to get it next? What is it worth? What can I do with it? Where's the staking portal? Where's the governance vote? And then similarly for the company, we're seeing more and more Web 2 operators come in as like a head of HR, as a CFO, as a general counsel. How do we make it easier for them to also like manage this stuff and, onboard or offboard people, raise a new token round, integrate new investors, incorporate a new token valuation, et cetera. So high level, how do we abstract over all the idiosyncrasies of the on-chain actions you have to take to distribute tokens, as well as like the off-chain ontology that you have to understand about how tokens are allocated?
And how did this idea to build the token management platform kind of come about? Was it at the hackathon? Like, I'm curious what spurred this vision.
Yeah, so that's why I was saying that my investment experience is relevant, right? So I've been a founder, right? And so I've managed equity, right? As a founder, I've received equity as an investor, as an employee. I've invested in companies. I've invested in funds. And so I saw the full life cycle of equity as, the unit of ownership in the Web 2 world. And in crypto, the token is that, transferable unit of value, unit of ownership, unit of utility, depending on exactly, how the token is designed. But, needless to say, the token is that like core value primitive that is, transferable in ownership to all of your stakeholders. And when I started working with crypto companies, I realized that really it was like, normally companies would come to me and they'd be like, hey, Bruno, I'm starting a company. Like, give me the playbook, right? What should I do? And it was pretty easy to like, use this tool, use Clerky, Carta, Stripe Atlas, Pilot. I actually literally made what I call the founder's checklist, and I tweeted it out. And I'm like, literally, if you use these tools, then just focus on your product, because like everything else is taken care of for you in terms of like back office, investor management, employee management. But with crypto, I realized that the tools didn't exist, and nor even did like the knowledge exist. The people that knew how to do those things didn't exist. It's like lawyers at the frontier. And so really the inspiration was, when I started in SaaS, I saw these companies, Clerky, Carta, Stripe, and they positioned themselves to really be foundational and like being the tool that every company used that made that company's life a lot easier, but also that company could grow and they could use, that tool when they're 2 people, they could use that tool when they're 2,000 people. And so we kind of looked at startups and we were like, hey, what are those tools going to be in the crypto world that every crypto company should use, that it should make their life easier? They should use it when they're 2 people or whether they're 2,000 people. And it should, I think the most important thing, prevent them from having to hire specialized knowledge. In Web 2, no one hires a general counsel or a CFO until you're a couple rounds in. Used to be a pretty early hire. And so like, what are those tools going to be? And then we just talked to, I think we interviewed 75 crypto companies, new protocols, old protocols, 2-person protocols, all the way up to like protocol labs, 1-inch, these really huge protocols. And this was one of the biggest pain points, is that token management. People, they want safety, they want security, they want reliability when they're moving value around.
It's brilliant. I think being able to identify that and have gone through it a couple times prior in kind of the Web 2 sense, and being able to identify that is it's not easy. I always say, like, in hindsight, everything seems obvious. And I think, like, yes, like token kind of management platform and building that and being able to distribute to all relevant parties in that management. Yes, like someone was going to build it, but being able to be there at the right time, understand like the market does not have that, and building that out is extremely difficult.
Yeah. And that's also why it's a lot easier to be a second, third time founder. I think you choose your idea much more carefully. And so not only did I start 2 companies, but I've also invested in 100 companies. And so I have a lot of data points on like what works as a business model, what's sticky, what's defensible, what's scalable, what is going to have downstream opportunities to expand on. And I think that the other thing is like, also like, what are we well suited for? Because we had plenty of good ideas that I didn't think I was the best founder for. Great accounting tools out there, like deep accounting. I'm like, I'm not that guy. Great deep legal tools. I'm like, hey, I'm not a lawyer, but being at that intersection of on-chain data and, those aspects of legal, of HR, of accounting, that I think we could become dangerously knowledgeable about. And I think I'm pretty close to being in like the top 0.1% of people knowledgeable about like token compensation taxes, right? And that's something that we're now building into the platform so that even experienced tax attorneys look at what we're building and be like, yeah, this is exactly how I'm thinking about it. And this gives me a way better way to track this stuff and make sure that, when that head of HR is in there onboarding someone, that we're doing everything by the book, that everything is on rails, and that we're tracking all those small details. And so we don't have a lot on our website about this stuff, but beyond the on-chain stuff, I'd say we are becoming experts on, legal, HR, tax, and accounting as it relates to that token compensation, token distribution, token management piece.
Fascinating. And I mean, I think this also speaks to just how early we are in the entire crypto space, that these basic functionalities have still not existed as of yet. And so, it's fascinating. In kind of, I mean, obviously you guys have now done a round, pretty prominent kind of investor group. Could you talk more just like how the product is going and some things that you're looking forward to either building out or things that are working like really well in the product today?
Yeah, I'd say, we've kind of followed a pretty classic startup journey. The first 6 months of the company, which was a little over a year ago, was really trying to understand the customer, the market. I mean, not a lot of people believe this, but basically I was I didn't know anyone in crypto a year ago. I was totally new, total outsider. The only reason, you even got connected to Shima, which led our round initially, was Yida and I went to college together 10 years ago. And believe me, he still ran me through as rigorous of a diligence process as anyone. But, so the first 6 months were really developing a deep understanding and deep relationships in the space. And then the second half of last year really was about how do we build really robust on-chain primitives, right? How do we have the most secure code for storing, transferring, moving tokens? I mean, just yesterday we onboarded mid 9 figures of tokens onto our platform, and I think we can sleep at night because we know there's a ton of tests, a ton of audits, the code quality is good, and so on and so forth. And we're actually now even making sure our upgrade authority is a squads backed by hardware wallets, right? Ledger. So it's really trying to be operationally secure. My background is in national security, which is a story for another time. and so a lot of it was building those technical foundations, building that technical product, and focusing on founders and projects that were launching tokens. So we really could help them when they launched the token or right before or anytime after that they wanted to automate those distributions, manage those distributions, kind of have it in one place, have that UI. And then now we're really starting to go deeper, with all the different stakeholders that are involved in that process. So I mentioned, the CFO, right? Making sure we have the accounting exports, down well, the general counsel, making sure that, what we're doing on chain is compliant and reflective of the agreements that are signed off chain, even making sure the terms are correct. What was signed in the SAFT is actually what is encoded on chain. I think we've built a really robust library to handle any different kind of unlock schedule. We've yet to see an unlock schedule we can't handle. And then the third piece is kind of that, HR piece, right? How do we make sure that, this isn't just a point solution, but it's something that really can help you at an organizational level where, sure, early on, it's the founder managing it, but in the later stage, it's not even the CFO, the GC, and the head of HR. It's an HR manager and someone on the accounting team and, one of the, either internal or external counsel, and building the workflows for those stakeholders. So that's what I'd say, growing up from just doing those on-chain workflows to also doing those off-chain workflows and kind of the bridge in between, such that we can help a company on day one. If you start a company, you'll be able to onboard on a Magna. We're home for all of your data, and we'll help you get to that launch. When you launch, we will help you with the on-chain stuff. And as you grow, we help you with the tax reporting, the tax withholding, making sure you're being compliant. And those are a lot of the things that we're excited about, because that's what gets it to be like an actual abstraction over the idiosyncrasies of managing tokens, not just a point solution that someone is token native, crypto native, only knows how to use.
So when you go to founders and say onboard to Magna, your main pitch is let us kind of handle the unsexy parts of your business and really allow you to focus strictly on like the product and what makes you guys successful, and we'll abstract the rest.
Yeah. They shouldn't have to worry about doing this stuff manually and getting it wrong. And their investors shouldn't be holding their breath, being like, I hope I get my tokens on time. I hope the founder remembers to send them and send them to the right address. And, some people, look, they're technically competent. And we've had people that are like, hey, we built our own contract, but hey, you guys have a nice UI for our recipients that we didn't build that ourselves. Or they say, oh, we built this stuff out ourselves, but then they run into edge cases that we have on our platform, right? We had a customer last week that was like, hey, we're on Solana. Shoot, now we're actually launching on Polygon. We're like, oh, great. We actually support both. Soon we're going to be supporting Aptos. Some of them launch tokens on multiple platforms, or they realize, oh, shoot, one of our investors lost access to their wallet. Can we send the tokens to a new wallet? So like all these little things, they add up. And what I always tell my team is like, this is a product of edge cases. It's a product of what are all the different parameters that, if you were to build yourself, you might not even know that you're going to need 6 to 12 months from now. And how can we like preempt that need? And then also, we are trying to be at the frontier also of building like really useful tools. So we built everything that I've talked about, but we're also building the most gas efficient airdrop tool on the market that's going to be hopefully formally verified. We're building, even on the legal side, we're building an easy 83B filing tool in partnership with a number of law firms. We're building like an open source token warrant with a number of law firms. I just wrote a 7,000 word blog post on tax implications of token compensation that we've had 3 law firms look at. And I'm actually working on with someone from the Congressional Committee on Taxation on Capitol Hill. So we're trying to go deep in the crypto world, but also deep, in the real world, because as crypto grows up, it can't avoid the real world. It can't avoid the regulation and tax and compliance. And that's our bet that we're making, is that companies are going to be bigger. They're going to get more sophisticated. There's going to be more regulation, even if it's not in the US, even internationally. And we want to be the tool that, when, even if you onboard someone in a different country, that you're like, oh, good thing we have Magna to help us manage that.
Yeah, that all makes a ton of sense. I think on your last point, like on the regulation and kind of legal guidelines, right now, at least in the US, it's definitely questionable. And so as the industry continues to progress, gets more mature, these teams do become larger. We scale from low millions to hundreds of millions, billions. Like, as you said, all these things are going to be necessary. And by positioning yourself ahead of all this, I think puts you guys in a wonderful spot.
And that's why we structured our cap table the way we did as well, right? We don't just have crypto natives. We have people like, Tiger Global, respected in the finance world, but also like Bradley Tusk helped Uber and Coinbase with a lot of their, regulatory push. And as we think about how does Magna become a part of the conversation on Capitol Hill, having those relationships in, people that are like deep Web2, deep government is going to be extremely helpful. But don't get me wrong, like we're also going like really deep on crypto primitives, right? Like we're building an SDK and we're seeing really creative uses of how do we distribute tokens to people. And it's not just employees or team members or investors. We're seeing some of our companies use our SDK to distribute to their community. We're seeing games use the Magna SDK to give tokens to their players. We're seeing, just really creative ways that people are leveraging our tools around, allocating tokens, distributing tokens, unlocking tokens, and then eventually also staking, compounding, voting. So there's a lot of cool technical stuff, because I think that we don't know what the killer crypto use cases are that are out there. We just have to give people the tools and make it really easy to incorporate crypto. And if we do our jobs well, not just Magna, but as an industry, building infrastructure, building APIs, building middleware, the founders of tomorrow should be using, crypto infrastructure off the shelf, not just because they like crypto or have like a philosophical, bent toward crypto, but because it's generally, the better, cheaper, more scalable solutions to do what they want to do. Or in the case of, ownership, for example, investors, it's the easier, thing to use in from a cross-border perspective.
I fully agree with all that. I mean, I think going back to it just being early, there's a lot of things that, developers have to think about that they don't have to think about, as you mentioned, on the Web 2 side, and building those primitives so they can even focus specifically on applications and the end user experience rather than all these kind of hurdles that in the Web 2 world have been unblocked. Is definitely going to make the onboarding for these next generation of devs much easier. On that kind of point, though, you guys have deployed to.
And I was going to add to that as well. Like, just real quick to double click on that point. Something I think about a lot is like, how do we give them that like Heroku moment, right? I remember when Heroku first came out, and like git push Heroku master was like this like, godlike command. Like it just worked, and it was deployed, and they had, blue green deploys, and it stayed up, and you're like, oh my God, like I don't have to like, SSH into like my EC2 box and like, spin up all these different clusters. So it's, something we think about is like abstracting over the oddities, and the oddities include Solana. Hey, maybe the chain was down, maybe gas was high, maybe you have to retry the transaction, cancel the transaction. Users don't always know what a nonce is, like all these things. Like, we have to get to the point where, you should really not have to know much of anything, not because it should be hidden from you, but because it should be presented to you in an understandable way of like, hey, this hasn't gone through. Do you want to cancel it? Do you want to try it again? Should we, hey, this failed. So I think once we get to that point, that's when we're going to see, I think, an explosion of adoption of crypto infrastructure.
Fully agree there. Looking forward to that day. I mean, it's been, even since 2017, there's a lot of groundwork that has been laid. And I think kind of comparing 2017 to today, after that like amazing bull run and then kind of crash, there wasn't even really usable products, which kind of sucked. I think DAI launched in December of 2017, so at the Pico top, but there wasn't actually very many products that you could use. And the fact that, it's fortunate we kind of have these cycles, but at least in this cycle and kind of this more downturn, there's actual products that we could use. There's still not a lot of users, at least today, but there's products. And to me, that's amazing. And I think it goes to exactly what you were saying, that these type of experiences and abstractions that developers were used to in Web 2 just didn't exist, or even the core infrastructure of the underlying blockchain was very can handicap like the development process. And so as much as we can, abstracting all these complexities and allowing engineers to build just amazing applications is the vision that I want, and excited that it's coming to fruition. You guys are building on multiple different chains. Did you originally kind of start out in the Solana ecosystem and then expand to others, and just being able to manage multiple different chains on the token side?
Yeah, we started with Solana because, again, like that community was just such a great entry point for us. And we were able to pretty quickly like get to know potential customers, investors, but also like, advisors, like technical friends that, could help us, build some of that stuff out, answer some of our technical questions early on. And so we started with Solana. That's where we got our early customers. It's, I think to this day where some of our, larger customers have been. And I think we've built a lot of pretty robust, infrastructure to help these companies manage their token distribution. But we've also expanded to Ethereum. So we launched on Ethereum in September. And we've been onboarding some pretty exciting customers there. And we have a particularly amazing, smart contract team on the EVM side. We expanded to Polygon, and that's actually where we started with our SDK initially. Our SDK is now also on Ethereum, also on Solana, but we've been working particularly closely with Polygon gaming companies, and that's a vertical we're really excited about. Working with gaming companies to help abstract over their token distribution, token allocation, token management, and not just from that, kind of operations perspective, but also from like in-game perspective. And so one of the tools we built is how do we make it easy to allocate tokens to someone based on in-game actions, in-game achievements, or really honestly anything else, like any off-chain KPIs or any off-chain threshold kind of quests that people solve. Like you should be able to then boom, like turn that into an on-chain piece of ownership that vests. Vesting airdrops is another thing people have used us for, which is really exciting. Like not just giving tokens up front, but airdropping tokens that you then vest over, 6, 9, 12 months. And so, yeah, so we've been big on EVM, big on Solana. And, I think later this year, there's a few blockchains we're pretty excited about. We're excited about Cosmos. We've gotten a lot of interest there. We're, starting to bring on some devs that have Cosmos experience. Aptos is another one that's pretty exciting to us. And, we've met with like the Sweet team, some Sweet teams on a couple of occasions. And yeah, we try to think about, we're not like chain maxis, we're not chain specific. I'm generally bullish on blockchains generally. And we've seen some teams, they go from Polygon to Solana, from Solana to Polygon, sometimes both. Sometimes they leave and go somewhere else. And our interest is how do we help really scale the whole ecosystem? Because over time, it shouldn't matter which chain you pick, and Magna can help you deploy across all of them, manage across all of them.
Very interesting. Yeah, no, I think I'm fully aligned with just being able to grow the pie in some sense. The fact that we are so early, I'm happy that all these different chains are trying different scaling approaches to bring in more users. And as of the moment, allowing developers to pick, I think, which one that they think they'll do the best, and allowing users to kind of choose their different sets of trade-offs is important. And so, no, it's interesting to hear how you're approaching it.
Yeah. So it's, it's a lot of fun because I think we do try to go deep into each ecosystem. It's why we don't expand that quickly, right? I mean, even within EVM, like these communities are very different. And sometimes, I see a project and they launch on every EVM chain, and I'm like, they're not all interchangeable. Sure, they might be interchangeable from a tech perspective, but they're different communities, different, projects that are big, different personalities that are in them, different, ways that the foundation interacts with the projects. And so I think we've been pretty careful. We started with Solana, built relationships there, built a sustainable presence there, moved to Ethereum, and then expanded to Polygon. And yeah, we're choosing what we expand and in what order we expand to, in such a way that we can provide the best experience, not just technically, not even just from a product. Every company that comes to us, we try to help them out. We try to connect them with other tools, other service providers, introduce them to lawyers, accountants, market makers, exchanges, listing teams, investors. I make a lot of investor intros for companies that I talk to. And, honestly, I couldn't tell you any of those categories of people in the Aptos ecosystem because we're not fully there yet. But I can tell you, if you're on Polygon, if you're on Ethereum, if you're on Solana, even if you're not ready to onboard onto Magna, which, we can onboard any company from day one if a token's in the future, we'll find other ways to help you because, again, we want to grow the pie. We want 100x the number of crypto companies that exist. And one of the ways we do that is through our product, which makes it easier to start and grow and operate a crypto company. We also do that through just personal support and through some of these like one-off tools that we're building.
Yeah, and kind of talking about the different communities and different ecosystems, what have your kind of biggest findings been there, just on like comparing and contrasting, or how, even as you were mentioning, the different ecosystem funds and like how they operate with founders?
It's interesting because like for me on the team, like I'm probably our person that's most into the Solana world, right? And I put a lot of energy into that, like in the Monkey DAO, in the Solana ecosystem chat. I was going to go to Mountain DAO this year, couldn't make it, but we go to the hack houses, we do some tutorials, and there, personally, I've been working really closely with some of the Solana folks and the Solana Ventures, Solana Foundation, and there a lot of the support is very dev oriented, right? Helping dev resources, funding some teams, but generally just providing a lot of support to people that are building. I said Nitesh on our team has been working really deeply with the Polygon ecosystem and the Polygon Foundation and the Polygon founders. And so, that's the thing, right? Like, again, like I don't think even internally as a team, we treat these ecosystems as fungible. So I'm like, I barely have enough energy to keep up with what's going on in the Solana world and who's who and what fight Mert is picking with the other people in the space. But it's so, we kind of divide and conquer, I'd say, internally from that perspective.
Makes sense.
But what we are seeing,
No,
what I would say is, from a VC perspective, like foundations and foundation investment arms aside, that we're also seeing a lot more investors go multi-chain. I'm talking to Solana investors that I've known as only Solana investors that are now like, hey, like, let's talk to some Polygon teams, some Ethereum teams. But the other way around, there's a lot, Solana for a while was kind of a closed community, and it was kind of impenetrable, opaque from the outside. But now there's other investors that are like, hey, like, how can I learn more about Solana and get involved in more Solana teams? And so I think, it's really great that we're seeing more people make a conscious push to look beyond, whatever their entry point might have been in terms of community, and really start to explore and get to know these different chains and these different communities within crypto.
I would definitely echo that. Even starting in like 2020, it was almost sinful to consider to build on anything other than Ethereum. And the fact that now developers, engineers, users, investors are all more open-minded to these different solutions, different trade-offs, different architectures. I think it's awesome for the space, just be able to try these different things and see ultimately what kind of people land on and what applications can be built in these different areas. And then oftentimes I really don't even think it's, at the end of the day, even sacrificing on decentralization. A lot of these things, I would say, were just so early in how we communicated about them, how we talked about them, that we didn't even have the language to speak properly. And now as we continue to learn and become more open-minded, these nuances and the definitions are more commonly understood. I think people are excited to venture into different areas that they thought they wouldn't have in the past. And so I would definitely echo the sentiment that the pie just needs to be grown. And the more people are open-minded to that, the better for the ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like we got to stop, building for the same 20, 30, 50,000 wallets. We got to build for the next billion wallets, the next billion users.
100%.
Or from our perspective, the founders that are going to go build the tools for that. Like, we don't think we're directly going to onboard the next billion users, but we want to make it easier for the people that have that idea to build that up and get it up and running.
True. On that front, there's been, now that you personally have kind of been involved in a couple cycles prior to 2017 and kind of some of that stuff throughout the 2018, 2019 bear market and this past bull market cycle, what are some of the biggest things that you've learned just from being involved for that period of time?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the biggest overarching thing that I've learned is just to have a long-term perspective. I think short-term thinking, sometimes dominates in a bull market where people think that there's a quick flip, right? A quick buck, a quick pump, and they only think 3 to 6 months out. Whereas when you look at a lot of the people that really have succeeded in this market, most of them started building in the bear market, right? Some of the big primitives of today were companies that were started in 2018 and in 2017, and they couldn't be short-term thinking because there was no opportunity on a 12-month time scale, right? You literally had to be building with the mindset of the thing we are building is going to be valuable in 3-4 years. And the thing we're doing is hard enough to take that long, but it's going to be worthwhile doing. And so I think long-term thinking is always important, not just in building, but also in investing, right? In terms of, what companies you look at, how quickly you deploy a fund, knowing that, the market could turn at any minute, and, acting accordingly, but even in how you build. I think, in the bulls, there's a lot of copy and paste and a lack of deep thought or honestly originality. And a lot of people are literally copying and pasting tokenomics, copying and pasting projects, other chains. And I think it's very lazy. And in a bear market, you don't get rewarded for that. And so I think thinking and building in a way that's long-term and sustainable, if you have that compounding advantage, it's kind of if it comes too quickly, you can almost slip away, right? Get taken away too quickly. but that which you build over time and with deep intent, doesn't go away quickly. And so I think that just what we're seeing now is good for the space, which is in this market, teams are more focused, they're more intentional, they're going back to first principles, and they're really, deeply thinking about what makes sense. Does a token make sense? When does a token make sense? How do we actually want to do our tokenomics, and think about it from the ground up instead of just taking what another project has done. And that's what excites me, because I think that's what's going to lead to some of the most long-term, interesting, creative, and original projects.
Definitely. I do agree. For some reason, I think there are just so many distractions during the bull market and so much kind of money falling from the sky in some sense that people definitely take the more short-sighted approach than trying to think about the long term and build for the long term. And I am refreshed that the bear markets ultimately force you to refocus and think about the long term and actually the decisions that you make and what that will do towards your business. And some
of those pressures are external, right? Like I'm not here trying to say that, people are being, disingenuous or scammy. Like some of it is investors that are like, when's the token? When are you launching? Your competitor just launched. What's your response? Like people want to see quick results. And I think in a bear market, again, it's not just the founders, the investors are like, hey, take your time. More important to figure out, the unit economics. Like, let's think long term here. Like investors are more forgiving. Your customers are, you can push back in a bull market. It's unthinkable to push back a launch for most people, because they're like, if we don't launch next week, market's going to move beyond us. And now it's like we tell our customers, hey, we need another month to do this right. They're like, cool, because our own token launch is okay if it gets delayed. Like everyone is a little more patient, a little more relaxed, a little more thoughtful. And I think for us in particular, like security is where that comes in handy. So, my background is in national security. And so I think a lot about, security at all layers. When we talk about security at Magna, it's not just cybersecurity, smart contract security, vendor security, operational security, are windows locked in the office? Do we buy ledgers directly from the vendor? Phishing, literally everything. And I think when you are, moving more methodically, more slowly, you're being more thoughtful. And even if you look at a lot of the biggest hacks of all time, many of them were a sloppy commit pushed in between audits by a dev that was tired, or someone that opened up a zip file from a stranger. I tell my team, never open a zip file. And so I think that bear market patience manifests itself in a lot of other ways that are also positive for the space beyond just maybe product strategy.
100%. And just, I would say, from your point of view and being able to wear so many different hats, or have worn so many hats on the investor side, building a Web2 company that was successful, got acquired, and then now kind of the venture here. I'm sure that plays, or all those learnings are in play here. What would your advice be to like founders from having the experience that you have to kind of navigate some of these even more choppy waters?
It's funny. I regularly tweet advice, at least specific to fundraising. So you follow my Twitter if you want more fundraising tips. But I think it truly, like, I don't want to sound cliche, but it's truly like one, go back to first principles, right? And I don't mean first principles just philosophical, like even business fundamentals, right? Product fundamentals. Why are you building what you're building? Who are you building it for? Why do they need it? Why your tool, is it 10x better than the status quo? Does it have to be 10x better? So like ask those fundamental questions. And sometimes I tell a lot of teams, I'm like, what, the teams will come to me like, hey, we're investors aren't biting. And I'll say, well, why are you convicted about this? Like, what is your conviction? Why is this the thing you want to spend the next 3 years of your life doing? And if your answer isn't compelling, even for yourself, like, why is it going to be compelling for other investors? Why is it going to be compelling for the market? I would say that, the era of free money is over, right? You can no longer just say, you are doing literally anything and people will throw money at you. I think you have to be thoughtful. You have to be intentional about why you're doing it, what you're doing, how you're doing it. And then something else I also tell teams is surround yourself with people that are knowledgeable and can cover your blind spots and can help you figure out your unknown unknowns. And so, for us early on, it was surrounding yourself with technical experts and people that had built crypto companies because we had never done those things. And specifically with founders, I say, hey, find an angel, an investor, an advisor, even just a mentor, a close friend that, has done the things you're trying to do or has seen and helped people do the things you're trying to do, because doing anything on your own is a recipe for, again, like running into blind spots that someone else that, you're working closely with or even just checking in with could have helped you see ahead of time.
Yeah.
And it's very generic advice, but like to get more concrete with fundraising, I get a lot of founders that come to me at the end of the fundraise and I'm like, oh shit. Like I wish I would have been there 3 months ago. I wish you would have had anyone 3 months ago that was a really involved angel or VC. Because sometimes I look at them and I'm like, hey, where you're at now, you got to take these crappy terms because you can't go back in time and run a better process. And I think the same applies to, building a team, to building a company, to building a product. Time is your most valuable asset. You can never get it back. And so how do you just make the most, make every week, make every month, make every quarter count?
Yeah, I love it. Maybe getting into some of those specifics on like either the fundraising side or like team management side. What are the biggest lessons that you learned there?
Yeah, I'd say for product, it's again asking the right questions and it's listening to the market. And I think one of the biggest archetypes that I see with founders is like the classic like solution looking for a problem. What I tell a lot of founders is like, find a space you're excited about, a problem statement. But then don't just start building, like go actually like validate, how are they going to use this? How much are they going to use this? How important is it to them? How much are they going to pay for it? And then decide like, is it worth building or not? Something I always like to do when I'm doing due diligence on a problem, I'll ask the person I'm talking to, because if you ask a problem in isolation, right? Let's say, I really start asking you, hey, Logan, what do you like? How can your vest be better? Right. And you might say, the zipper is a little annoying, hey, the neck's a little rough, and so I might come away with that being like, okay. And I'm like, hey, if I built a vest, easy zipper, collar was just right, it's a little bit warmer, you'd be like, yeah, that's amazing, I would buy that. But then the question I always ask is like, okay, where does this stack rank with all the other shit you think about during the day? How important is this relative to everything else you have to do? And then you're like, yeah, but literally I don't think about it at all, actually. If you focus just on that problem, I'm sure you will have strong opinions about it. But if you zoom out and you're like, how often are you even thinking about this thing? You're probably going to be like, yeah, not that often. And so for us, right, like we actually pivoted from something we were doing before, not in Web3. It was like B2B SaaS marketplace to help people save money on SaaS tools. And it's like one of those classic traps where if you ask people in isolation, do you want to save money on SaaS tools? Of course. Hey, do you wish you could use a better tool? Oh, yes. But then, I use Ramp and they tell me every day I could be saving $100 a year by switching to a monthly, DocuSigns, annual DocuSign subscriptions of monthly. And I'm like, yeah, it's just not worth my time. I honestly don't care. And so that's what I tell founders when it comes to product diligence. It's like, ask those tough questions and think about the problem in the grand scheme of things and whether it's not just a good product, but a good business. And the other thing I would say while we're on that topic of like things first time founders get wrong, I think management is really hard. And I think most people are bad managers. Just because those people don't have experience managing. They've never been coached on how to manage. And so I think more founders need to have an investor that they work with closely that has an operational experience, or like a mentor, a coach, someone that they can come to. I had a founder come to me last week and they were like, Bruno, I'm going to make up a role. I freaking hate my head of product. And when we got down to it, it turns out it was actually a communication issue where they weren't fully communicating their expectations. And we ended up that conversation with a clear plan of like, hey, here's how I, Bruno, think you could be a little more explicit about your expectations from that person. And also here's how I think you could be a little more open-ended in reaching. So like that stuff, like no one knows. If you have not managed dozens of people, if you haven't managed managers, like you're not going to know that stuff. And so again, that's a thing where, you know, a founder might just go through life being like, you know, maybe just teams are dramatic and annoying and difficult, when it's like, actually, maybe you just need to go find someone to, you know, that you can vent to, that can help you understand like what you might be doing wrong. And that's what I mean about blind spots, is they're like unknown. The thing about a blind spot is you don't know you have it until there's, you know, that car in your blind spot that you hit. Right. And it's kind of like that. It's that unknown that unless someone is there to be like, hey, are you checking your blind spot? You're like, what blind spot? Oh, shoot. Right. And that applies to all walks of life: managing, fundraising, product building, anything that you haven't done before or haven't done with that same context.
100%. No, lots of good bits in there. And I think people need to rewatch that and internalize a lot of it. On going forward, maybe just like the last like 5 minutes or so.
And I'll say again, the biggest blind spot: fundraising. If you're fundraising for the first time, you're probably going to fuck it up. Or if you don't fuck it up, you're not going to optimize it. You're not going to get as much as you should. So yeah, like that's why I always tell founders, hey, my DMs are open. Sometimes I'm busy, but I always get around to it. If you ever need fundraising help, if you find yourself, sometimes I get founders, I'm going to make up a fund. You know, I'll get them with a top tier fund. They're like, Bruno, you know, again, made up fund. I have a term sheet from Andreessen. I literally don't know what to do with that. So I'm like, all right, call me. I'll talk you through it. The next time, you know, get someone in your corner that's going to have already been there before that happened.
Definitely. No, it's, I hope your DMs don't blow up too much after this. But
they're already blown up, but I inbox 0 every week at the end of the week. So I get to everyone eventually. Eventually. I might not reply immediately, but I will get to you.
On that, like, kind of closing thoughts, what are you either like personally excited about or looking forward to in like the blockchain space, either from like your own product with Magna to just adoption and kind of Web3 more broadly?
Yeah, I think there's like 3 things that I'm excited about. I think one is composability, right? And what I mean by that is like, you know, we're building our SDK. You know, we're starting to bump into, okay, like people want to do vesting, they want to do streaming, but then they also want to stake lock tokens, vote with lock tokens. They want to be able to, you know, use some of these DeFi, you know, maybe borrow lend primitives. So, you know, people now, sometimes they want to trade their positions, NFTs. So there's a lot of cool stuff. We can't build it all. No one can build it all. So how do we start making sure that things we're building are composable with other systems, interface with other systems, and, you know, go and talk to other people in the space and think, hey, how can maybe both of us change what we're building to make them work more well together? So I'm excited about composability because I think that's really unique to crypto, and we should be taking more advantage of it. I'm excited about security, honestly. Like we're looking at formal verification. You know, I'm excited that security as it relates to, you know, not in isolation, but also in compliance and regulation. You know, we support multisig. We're integrating institutional qualified custodians. And so I think making security easier for people. How can people interact with multisigs more easily? How can they more easily, you know, even onboard onto an institutional custodian? And how can they seamlessly, you know, use all 3, right? So whether they have tokens in our smart contracts, in their multisig, or in an Anchorage, BitGo, Firelocks, et cetera, like it should be a seamless experience. So I'm excited about making it easier for people to make better security choices, right? Better infrastructure choices, better product choices that make, you know, their workflows and their tokens more secure. And I'd say the third thing, I'm really excited. I spend most of my time these days, probably like when I'm not hiring or helping founders fundraise, a lot of my time is talking to lawyers. I am excited about taking all this knowledge that is trapped in the minds of the lawyers and tax specialists and accountants at the frontier that, you know, only the best, you know, people with the biggest budgets are getting, and putting those into our product. If we can, every time I talk to a lawyer, I try to probe the, you know, depths of the edge cases. Hey, when do you have to, use an exemption to issue and distribute tokens? What if that exemption runs out? What do you do? What if you're multinational? What if you're multi-entity? What if you have people that are W-2, 1099? What if they're in different countries? So I think I get really excited about, trying to become an expert and absorb all this complexity that honestly comes from having all these conversations with different people and seeing where their answers don't match and saying, okay, let's double click on that so that we can, where we can, make that a part of the product. And generally, even where we can, like, make that an open source blog post. I wrote this 7,000 word blog post about token taxes that I mentioned. We've had like 4 law firms look at it. And another, it's funny, a lawyer and a founder, both asked me, they're like, hey, are you going to charge for this? Like, are you going to paywall it? I'm like, no, I'm going to like publish it and make it free because, and then they're like, well, there goes your advantage. I'm like, yeah, I've done hundreds of hours of research. The moment I hit publish, I'm back to square one. Everyone else is on the same page as I am. But I think that if we want to grow as a space, we have to make this specialized knowledge a commodity, so that we can move on to more interesting problems. So the lawyers can move on to more interesting things, and the founders can move past, what's a frontier issue today, like should just be a boring cut and dry issue. And we're going to run into more gray areas, more frontier issues. And one at a time, we'll productize those, we'll commoditize that knowledge, we'll standardize those decisions so that we can become a little more predictable and standardized as a space.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, no, I really appreciate it. I think a lot of people will learn from your wisdom. Kind of, you have gone through multiple kind of iterations of just a company life cycle. I think is extremely invaluable in the crypto sense because crypto is so new, and the learnings that you have taken from those previous companies and now applying them in the Web3 front, as you said, it really taking some of that like specialized knowledge and making it open to grow the crypto pie, I think is very admirable, and very excited for what you're building on the Magna front. And again, thank you. It was a really fun chat.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.